In 2012, two Indian entrepreneurs decide to mirror an incredibly successful Canadian startup.
ये SMBs के लिए टेक्नोलॉजी कोई बिल्ड नहीं करता है इंडिया, वो हम लोग के लिए बहुत बड़ा एक यूरिका मोमेंट हो सकता है.
Hoping to bring every small Indian business owner online, they had no idea that within a few years, they would help lakhs of orders get delivered every day without touching a single package.
This company is building the Shopify of India.
E-commerce enablement platform Shiprocket.
After mobile apps अगर देखोगे, then next big thing क्या हो रही थी? E-commerce. That was the next big move.
But why were they forced to make a borderline suicidal pivot in the middle of their journey? Forced to do what few Indians had ever dared to do before. This is the story of how a tiny startup cracked the biggest problem of Indian e-commerce in less than 10 years. In 2012, Sahil and Gautam noticed something interesting that was happening in the West. A new company, Shopify, had quietly transformed e-commerce across US and Canada. When its founders tried to build an online store to sell snowboards in Canada in 2006, they were disgusted. The existing e-commerce platforms were either too complex, too expensive, or too inflexible for a small business. That's when they had a much bigger realization. E-commerce was the opportunity of the century and its scope was unlimited. But unless you had deep technical skills, building an online store was impossible for a small business owner. However, the struggle did not end there. Most e-commerce tools and softwares were built for large companies. They were expensive, hard to use, and required technical knowledge. So Shopify came up with a magical offering. Anyone could use it to set up an online store in hours without any coding. But it still allowed people to customize the store with themes, apps, and APIs. So by the 2010s, it had become one of the biggest platforms in Canada and the US. And that's when the founders noticed a huge opportunity. Indian e-commerce was also booming. But Shopify did not fit into the Indian puzzle. Shopify offered a world-class e-commerce experience. And it was amazing for the infrastructure-ready Western markets, where payments, logistics, and fulfillment systems were already dependable. However, India's e-commerce ecosystem operated very differently. It had challenges which required a fundamentally different approach customized for India. So making a bold move, the two started Kartrocket, a simple platform that allowed small sellers to set up online stores customized for the Indian e-commerce ecosystem. Slowly but steadily, Kartrocket started onboarding hundreds of sellers across India. But instead of being happy, the two of them soon had an interesting realization. They realized that the fundamental problem with India was not the store, it was something else entirely. With Jio's entry in 2016, data costs suddenly dropped, bringing millions of Indians online. Social platforms like WhatsApp and Facebook emerged as places for small merchants to sell goods. So finding places to sell wasn't really a big problem for small business owners in India. The real problem was executing the orders that the sellers received. Shopify worked in Western markets because once a seller built an online store, the rest of the system was ready for the sale. People used credit cards regularly and the delivery addresses were clear. Logistics networks had existed for decades and order returns were rare. But the founders realized that India was a completely different story. Small business owners who wanted to sell online faced three major problems. Number one was the minimum order quantity. Most reputed couriers would only onboard you if you shipped hundreds of orders a day. So small sellers with 10 to 20 orders every day were either rejected or charged very high prices, while the other options were either too expensive, too slow, and sometimes both. This made the barrier to entry extremely high. But the second and much bigger problem was India's love for cash on delivery. India has always been a low trust society. People's trust in random online sellers is so low that they prefer cash on delivery instead of facing the risk of paying beforehand. But even people who wanted to pay online couldn't do it easily in the early 2010s because India's online payments infrastructure was underdeveloped until very recently. So India ran on cash on delivery. But while this was a boon for the Indian consumer, it was a nightmare for online sellers. COD created a working capital blockage due to slow delivery. For example, after an order was placed, it could take 3 to 7 days to be delivered. And once the payment is done, the courier partner took another 3 to 7 days to credit the amount into the seller's account. So a small seller's working capital could be blocked for 14 days. And the final and most massive challenge was RTO, or return to origin shipments. And RTO happens when an order is shipped by the seller but refused by the customer during delivery. With cash on delivery, the customer can cancel the order anytime before delivery, even at the doorstep. Maybe the customer doesn't have cash. Maybe they changed their mind. Maybe the address was wrong. Whatever the reason may be, the package then travels back to the seller. That means the sellers have to pay twice for the forward journey as well as the return journey of the shipment. This increases the shipping cost for the seller, blocks their inventory, and wastes a huge amount of money. The average RTO rate in India is about 25%, and it can be as high as 40% in the apparel category. For a small online seller, it can easily make or break the business. So it became clear to the founders that the ability to sell online was not the barrier in India. It was the ability to fulfill. And with this deeper understanding, they made a bold and risky pivot. In 2017, they shifted their focus from storefronts to order fulfillment and execution, launching Shiprocket, unaware that they would change Indian e-commerce forever. On one hand, Shiprocket partnered with top courier companies like Blue Dart and Delivery, promising them thousands of shipments. On the other hand, it launched a platform where small sellers could sign up and start shipping immediately. But Shiprocket magically removed the requirement of minimum order quantities for sellers. And to make things even better, it allowed them to compare and choose from multiple courier partners. So you could choose the best option depending on the price, package size, or delivery speed. This is called the courier aggregator model. But the genius of this model didn't stop there. Since Shiprocket collectively booked lakhs of shipments a day from these courier partners, it negotiated to get bulk discounts. And then these discounts were passed on to the sellers. So not only did the sellers now have better options to ship, but it was also a lot cheaper. And the result was beyond their wildest dreams. Shiprocket became such a huge hit with sellers that it was soon onboarding thousands of sellers every month. Soon it also added international courier partners, helping small Indian sellers reach countries across the world. And that was when they had a weird realization. Shiprocket had started by tackling the hardest layer of e-commerce in India, but that unintentionally gave it a huge advantage. By shipping lakhs of shipments across pin codes, Shiprocket was silently gathering something incredibly valuable: data. Every shipment told a story, pin codes where deliveries failed, which customers were likely to return orders, and a lot more. And Shiprocket realized that using this data, it could help sellers not just during the shipping, but before and after it as well. So the company started building a range of new products that would change Indian e-commerce forever. They introduced Shiprocket Checkout, which made the checkout process faster and easier. Customers could now choose from multiple payment options, and personalized coupons nudged them to complete their purchase. As a result, fewer customers dropped off at checkout and orders shifted from COD to prepaid, reducing RTOs. But that wasn't all. Using its data, Shiprocket could also predict the behavior of customers. So a seller was already warned of orders that had high chances of going RTO, helping them act in advance. And Shiprocket did not stop there. They knew that after an order was placed, customers often wondered where their order was. So they launched Engage 360. It sent automatic WhatsApp updates at every stage of the order. This dramatically reduced the "Where's my order" calls and messages, resulting in saved cost on customer care and better user experience. And once the order was delivered, sellers could still engage with their customers, asking them for feedback and nudging them for new purchases. So within 10 years, Shiprocket had silently connected all the dots for Indian e-commerce sellers, helping them get orders, deliver orders, and take care of the customers after delivery. Shiprocket serves over 4 lakh sellers today. It ships to over 220 destinations across the globe, becoming an operating system for running e-commerce in India. Because Shiprocket realized that being called the Shopify of India was not about mirroring Shopify's products. It was about cracking the most difficult problem about Indian e-commerce, becoming the execution layer. By owning the fulfillment, data, payments, engagement, and capital flows, Shiprocket smartly positioned itself at the center of a huge opportunity space. And things may be just getting started. From cross-border trade to supply chain intelligence and even financial services, Indian e-commerce growth story is just beginning. And with compounding now in Shiprocket's favor, it might just become the biggest contributor to this growth story. If you made it this far, please hit the subscribe button. That helps me a lot. Until I see you in the next video, goodbye.